What is up, guys? Welcome back to another video. In today's video we are going to be unboxing and reviewing the Maker X GO-FOC HI100 Vesc based ESC from Maker X. We are currently using this on our mini bike setup, so that's what we're going to be testing it on. All of the components included with this ESC are inside of this large plastic bag. There's a separate smaller bag with all of the accessories, and then the actual ESC itself. So here's our first look at the ESC. It comes with what they call a cooling box, which is effectively just the casing for the Vesc. I really like the finish, feel, and the quality. It makes it feel like a premium product, and it will also act as a heatsink for the Vesc, especially when under high loads with something like the mini bike that's going to be drawing a lot of current at a high voltage. Moving into the specs, I'm just going to read these straight off of Maker X's website. The ESC is rated for 100 amps continuous current and 200 amps peak current. It can also run up to 75 volts or 4S to 16S batteries. This ESC is based on Vesc 75300 hardware, which is why it can go up to that 16S voltage. I love the connectors that they chose to use on this, and I think that they should be the standard ones on all ESCs. The battery has an XT90 and the motor has 5mm bullet connectors. Their website does say that they are 6mm now, so ours is just the older version which used 5mm bullet connectors. While I do like the connectors that they opted to use for battery and motor connection, I absolutely hate those used for any of the other interfaces on the ESC. They all use GH 1.25 JST cables, which are basically used on nothing. Fortunately, they do include all of the proper wires inside of the accessories pack, but that does mean you're going to have to solder up your own sensor wire adapter for your motor. Speaking of the accessories included, Maker X did a great job of including all of the proper connectors that you'll need to get this ESC set up. As I mentioned, they include all of the proper JST cables for all of the 5 ports on the ESC, so that you can solder them up and not need to go elsewhere to purchase them. They also have the proper bullet connectors to put on your motor, and they have the proper XT90 to put on your battery. Additionally, they include a programming cable, which is a micro USB, and finally a Maker X sticker, which is a nice touch. And there you have it. That is everything that's included when unboxing the GO-FOC HI100 from Maker X. Now to discuss the size of the ESC. This thing is insanely thin. The dimensions are 77.5 by 77.5 by 19.5 millimeters, meaning that it is thinner than a single 21700 cell. For comparison, here is the Maker X compared to one of the most popular ESCs a couple years ago, the FOC Single from Inertian. As you can see, the footprint of the Maker X is quite a bit bigger than the FOC Single, but it does handle a lot more current voltage and it packs a higher punch. However, from the side view, the Maker X is actually as thin, if not thinner, than that of the FOC. For a controller that can handle up to 16S and 200 amps peak current, it's quite impressive how compact this thing is. Just for reference, the FOC Single weighs in at 104 grams, whereas the Maker X weighs in at 288 grams, which is almost 3 times the weight of that of the FOC. Hopefully this comparison has helped demonstrate the dimensions and the size of the Maker X. The purpose of this is obviously not a comparison, but just to have a reference point to see the size of the Maker X. After unboxing this thing and getting a first look at it, my only real complaint are the ports. I 100% dislike the GH 1.25 pitch JST connectors. There's no other Vesc-based ESC as far as I know that uses this type of JST connector, meaning that it's not very universally compatible and requires soldering for any accessory. Additionally, they've opted to use a micro USB for programming as opposed to a USB-C, which has become more of a standard at this point. However, that's a very minor complaint. As I mentioned earlier in the video, the Maker X is being used on our DIY electric mini bike build. The build video is already up and we will leave a card to it in the top right corner here. The summary is that it's using a 16S 3P P42A battery and an 8100 motor. Testing the Maker X with 16S and this massive motor that's going to put a lot of load on the ESC is really going to push it a lot. For reference, the max motor current is 130 amps and the max battery current is 80 amps. The sheer weight of the mini bike and the weight and size of the tires is also going to add a lot of load to the motor and the ESC. The wheels feature 6-inch aluminum rims. The full dimensions of the wheel are 12 inches in diameter and around 3.5 inches wide, so they're very heavy and require a lot of force to turn. Now to get into the experience of actually riding this ESC and the performance that it's had. The discussion of the Maker X's performance will be divided up into 3 different categories which reflect the different testing that we've done on the Maker X. The first is just everyday riding, the second is up extremely steep hills, and then the third is up hills for extended periods of time. To start out, we first have everyday riding. The general summary so far is that it's been very good and it's held its ground very well on the DIY electric mini bike. It provides great power to the massive 8100 motor and has handled the 16S battery with ease. There's been no problems whatsoever that I've encountered with the ESC so far. We've been riding the electric mini bike consistently above 20 miles an hour and up steep hills all the time, and it's handled all of those very well and we've never had any issues. For the average daily ride and any hard, short local rides that we've done, it's performed great on the mini bike and we couldn't be any happier with this choice as our ESC. So in terms of testing the Maker X in our daily lives, it's performed great, but we really wanted to see how much this ESC could do and what it was capable of. To do this, we took the mini bike to the steepest hill that we could find. According to our iPhone Measure app, it's 18 degrees, which is 31%, and if you don't know, that's insanely steep. When we drove down this hill to actually get to the filming location, it was scary, that's how steep it is. Riding the mini bike up this hill is really going to put a ton of strain on the Maker X, as so much current's going to be running through that motor and through that ESC to even be able to make it up at a slow speed. Not only is this hill extremely steep, but it's extremely steep for an extended period of time. The hill itself is probably a quarter of a mile long, and we started at the very bottom. The mini bike with the Maker X cruised all the way to the top without any issues. It's absolutely ludicrous how much power and current this ESC can handle, and it's a pure beast for short sprints like this. The manner in which this ESC handled the hill, considering all of the conditions present during this test, goes to show how good of an ESC this is going to be for any sort of electric vehicle under high loads. To test the Maker X to its limits, we took the mini bike up into the Cascades to ride from an elevation of 4,000 feet up to historic Timberline Lodge at 6,000 feet along an old service road. The ride up to the top is right around 7% with pitches as steep as 14%, which is quite steep considering that it's a 6-mile long hill. So this hill is really going to push the mini bike and the Maker X to its limits to see if it triggers any sort of thermal warning or overheating on the mini bike. We started the journey at the bottom with an 190-pound rider riding up at around 20 miles an hour, and for the first mile and a quarter the mini bike performed perfectly. It was bombing up with no issues, able to accelerate seamlessly, easily, and just dominate the hill. The 1.25 mile marker was the beginning of a span of overheating issues on the Maker X for the mini bike. The mini bike slowed down so much that we switched back to an 150-pound rider to put less strain on the ESC before eventually stopping it for a 5 to 10 minute break to allow it to cool down. After this, we continued trickling up the hill at an alarmingly slow rate in an attempt to actually make the climb. The remainder of this climb attempt was very slow, and every mile or so we had to stop to allow the bike to cool down. We eventually called it quits as the rain started and turned back down the hill after 3 miles. While attempt number 1 on the Maker X was a failure, we were confident that if we put an 150-pound rider from the beginning and didn't bomb up the hill for the first bit, an overheating issue would not be present, so we tried again the next day. This time we started with an 150-pound rider and capped out the top speed at around 15 to 20 miles an hour, cruising at 10 on average. These limitations completely altered how attempt number 2 up the service road went. The mini bike flew all the way up the 6-mile long hill with no issues. I'm super impressed of how the Maker X handled this ride up. Although we were going up at a slow speed, this is a relatively compact ESC that's powering a 16S battery and an 8100 motor going up a 6-mile long hill. The fact that it even made it up there is impressive. There's no application where one's going to be riding up a 6-mile long hill in one go, so this is more of a limitations test rather than a real-world riding test. So overall, I'm super impressed with how the Maker X did, considering all of the conditions that the ESC is under when it's on this bike. Reflecting back on it, even the first attempt I would consider a success. The fact that we were able to go up a 1.25 mile long hill at full speed on the bike before any overheating occurred is quite impressive to me. So overall, the Maker X gets 2 thumbs ups for us in terms of its performance. I would have loved if the Maker X could have made it up to the top of that 6-mile hill. However, I'm not too worried about the fact that it didn't, because the mini bike setup really does put a whole lot of strain on this ESC. If you're riding pretty much any other electric vehicle, I think that it shouldn't have any problem or any overheating issues in any scenario. So to recap our findings after testing the Maker X ESC on the DIY electric mini bike. In our daily lives, we haven't had any issues with it so far, and it's been superb. I absolutely love it for just any sort of generic riding that I'm doing. For hill climbing, it dominated a 31% hill, which shows me that this thing can handle some serious current and power. Though the first hill climb test ended in a failure and the second one was limited by the way we were riding, I'm overall impressed with how well this thing handled high loads for extended periods of time, especially when considering all of the factors when riding this mini bike. So if you're looking for a high voltage single ESC for your DIY electric vehicle, I would definitely recommend the Maker X GO-FOC HI100. The only application that I wouldn't consider this for is a DIY one wheel, as it doesn't have a built-in IMU, which I like to have. The one major flaw and complaint that I do have about this ESC are the ports that they use. I really do dislike the JST connector here. It's not universally compatible with anything else, meaning that this ESC is not very plug and play. If you have any questions regarding our initial impressions / review of the Maker X ESC, please make sure to leave them down in the comment section below and we will do our best to get back to you. We will also leave a link in the description below to the Maker X ESC. If you guys haven't watched the DIY electric mini bike video, we also highly recommend that you guys watch that so you can see how we integrated this ESC into the mini bike. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel for more DIY electric skateboard content. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching and we will see you guys in the next video.